and welcome to this lovely picnic table here on the lower part of the Merced River in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California. I'm just outside Yosemite National Park, and today I'm taking a look around and accepting the fact that springtime here, with all the lovely wildflowers and rain and cool temperatures, is almost gone, and summer is rapidly approaching with all the heat and drought that goes with it. But there's this scent in the air that it still just smells like spring, but it's actually a particularly special kind of tree that grows here and goes into bloom about this time of year. Now it's actually fairly unusual to find these super flowery trees in places like the west coast of North America. So this is a very special tree already, and it deserves some time to look at it, and we're going to go out and have a gander at this tree today, and we're going to talk about how it has a particularly interesting and fantastic way of surviving in the hot, dry summers here in California. Let's go check out what this tree is with a quick warning first. Before we get out there and take a look at this tree, something important to know is in low elevation places like this where this tree grows, you need to watch out for poison oak, like this plant next to me here. You can identify it by remembering the adage, 3 leaves and shiny is not for the hiney. Watch out for leaves in sets of 3 that are kind of shiny, and avoid this plant if you don't want to get a nasty rash while looking for our little tree. That's truly one of the best floral scents that you can get growing native here in the state of California. But who's making this incredible flower? I mean, heck, it's almost a foot long with a whole bunch of dense petals, great scent, you can smell it for hundreds of feet around. Who is this tree? Well, I'm standing out here with my friend, the California Buckeye tree. It's the only tree in this Buckeye genus that you can find native here, although you might recognize the name from the rather more famous Ohio Buckeye of the East or the horse chestnuts of Europe and Asia. Now this particular tree here is smaller than some of those cousins, but it does have some really interesting traits that it has evolved to survive in this place of California. But before we talk about that, we need to learn how to identify this tree if you come across it in the wild. Ways to identify this tree and a couple of different traits. First trait, form. How does this tree look from afar? Well, you notice my friend the California Buckeye isn't too big behind me here. Now, in this shrubby form, this is kind of on the edge of the tree's range. It's a dry place for it to grow, so it's kind of staying short and rolling with the punches. But there are places in the state where you can find California Buckeye growing into some pretty substantial full-size trees, 30 feet or so tall, even up to 50 in some cases, and with pretty thick trunks. But around here where I'm standing, not that many of them above this height here, especially in places where fire rolls through, knocks them back to the ground. Trait number 2, the leaves. How would we describe the leaves of my friend the California Buckeye? Well, the way we would describe these leaves is as palmate. And when I say palmate, think of the palm of your hand with little fingers pointing off of it, except in the case of the California Buckeye, they could have 5 fingers, but they could also have 7 fingers, just like me. Ah, it's poison oak. Now leaf size is going to vary significantly, sometimes just about an inch across for tiny little new growth, but in other cases where the tree is growing back as sucker growth from the roots after the top trunk has died, you might find some pretty big leaves about 6 inches across. How about the bark and the wood here? Well, the bark of this tree is usually going to be a gray color, and the wood is going to be somewhat soft and pithy, meaning that the centers sometimes are a little bit hollowed out in such a way where you break it off, you have kind of the central area that's a little bit weaker wood than the outside. This is going to haul back to traditional native uses of this tree as a way to make fire, because pithy wood is good for making fire. All right, last trait, the flowers. And now perhaps the most distinctive trait of this tree, these beautiful and fragrant flowers. These flowers can be in these long, not exactly chains, but all growing off the same stalk here, and they're all standing upright on the tree, anywhere from about 4 inches up to over a foot in length. Very fragrant. That's an identification feature in itself. You might smell this tree before you even see it. So keep an eye out for these wonderful flowers in the late springtime. So what's the story behind my friend the California Buckeye here? Well, you might be thinking that it could be a flower story because, you know, it's got these beautiful flowers and they're really fragrant, but I've kind of already done a tree story about flowers. Go check out the Pacific Dogwood video. So the story of this tree actually is going to be about its fascinating adaptation to surviving summer drought. And we're going to start with something to know about the leaves of the tree, because the leaves of the tree are very important. Most trees are photosynthesizing from their leaves. All that green means there's chlorophyll in there. Chlorophyll is going to be the compound that's really important for taking sunlight and turning it into sugars. And without this chlorophyll, without these leaves, you can't really make those sugars and survive. And if you don't make enough energy, you die. But the problem with leaves is that leaves are also a place where, as the tree is taking in carbon from the atmosphere and starting that process, it's also letting water out through the same holes that it's taking carbon in. And in the summertime here, letting a ton of water out of the leaves can be a big problem. And the tree can do a little bit to help out with this by having somewhat small leaves. You'll notice in dry places, a lot of trees don't have these huge broad leaves. But that isn't quite enough for the California Buckeye. And in order to see the trait in full action here, we need to come back in late summer and see how this tree has kind of worked to adapt to this problem of water escaping through the leaves during the dry months. Okay, here we are in late summer, and we're about to do the big reveal of what that adaptation is that the California Buckeye uses to survive this summer weather. So I'm gonna turn around, take a look at the tree in late summer, and oh no! Oh, it died! Oh, this tree's dead! Why? It had so long left to live! Oh! Okay, hold on, get a grip. There's gotta be a reason that this tree is dead. It can't be dead. There has to be an adaptation to surviving summer. What's going on? My apologies for the fake freak out there about our California Buckeyes, but I like to emphasize the point that by the end of summer here, these trees really do look like they've died. And it is, in fact, the adaptation we've been looking for as to how they survive in this hot, dry place. A lot of the other Buckeyes of the world live in places where there's a lot of summer rain, but not so here in California. And if we remember that leaves, as they make energy, are losing water through the same holes that they take in carbon dioxide from the atmosphere into, we know that if these trees have their leaves all summer, that's an entire summer to be losing water out of those leaves. So what has the California Buckeye done? Well, it's evolved to move the time of year when it has its leaves out slightly earlier. This tree is going to send out new leaves during the late wintertime, early spring, because California is a mild climate. It can do that without worrying about snow, and it'll photosynthesize through that period. And then when summer comes along and it really dries up, doesn't want to lose that water, and so it just kills off the leaves and goes dormant during the summer rather than during fall. It's a phenomenal water-saving adaptation. So it means when you come across this tree in September, like I am right now, it will often look like it has almost completely died with all those leaves crunchy and brown. But if you do look closely, you can actually see fresh buds already taking form here, waiting for fall to come along so that this tree can send out new growth, make energy throughout the winter time, and be ready for next year's hot, dry summer when it has to go dormant again. And there's one other fun feature of the Buckeyes that you get to look at only in the fall. Oh, this one's got poison oak right under it. Here we have that fun feature of the Buckeye tree that you really only get to see in the fall here. This is a growing Buckeye fruit right here, getting ready to fall to the ground so that it can hopefully germinate during the wet winter, put down some deep roots. And I like to point this out because these seeds, which are what give the Buckeye its name by looking like the eye of a buck, are the feature of this tree that continues showing that it is alive during the summertime. Even after its leaves have gone away, the tree isn't just completely dormant, it's still putting energy into growing these new seeds. So by the end of the year, you have a barren tree with these fairly large seeds coming off of it here. And this is actually another adaptation to dry conditions here in a place like California. Large seeds like this have a large amount of stored energy in them, which means that when they fall to the ground, there's a lot of energy there to put down deep roots to get ahead of the next year's hot, dry summer. so that when these baby trees are down there, they've already got a little bit of an extra oomph from that extra energy from their parents, whereas smaller seeds might not have enough to give those roots the depth they need to survive our hot, dry summers here. So now you know. And you can watch out for our buckeyes in fall with lots of hanging buckeyes off of the tree wrapped in these little brown husks until they start splitting open and revealing the seeds inside. Are there human connections with the California Buckeye tree? Well, yeah, if you've watched any of my other videos, you know there's always a human connection with the tree that we're talking about because humans are just very connected with trees. In the case of the California Buckeye here, in its native range, this tree is an important traditional food for many different Native American tribes across the state. Now, it's not just some easy thing where you can walk up to the tree, pluck off one of those buckeyes and eat it, because they have these toxic compounds called saponins. So these Native American tribes here, they had to figure out first how to leach out those toxic materials and cook it properly, and you should never go out there and try to do that unless you know exactly what you're doing because you've been taught by somebody who knows exactly what they're doing. This tree is also important not as a food source, but as a source of fire. See, these branches here, they're kind of pithy in the middle. Remember that? They've got a little bit, not solid wood, but kind of spongy material, which makes them an excellent source of spindle sticks that can be used for fire. If you rub that stick between your hands and it's on top of another piece of harder wood, as that spindle stick rubs, it creates friction and heat and can be used to create fire. So there's several different nations have origin myths about fire being stored inside of the buckeye tree for its power to be used to recreate fire if you're ever in need of that. Now you know a little bit about it. The next time you're out and about in the foothill regions of California, take a look around and see if you can spot a California buckeye, and remember how this tree connects you with the rest of the environment. Hi everybody, I hope you enjoyed this last tree video. If you want to learn a lot more about trees, you can keep up with this page by subscribing to it. And if you want to help it grow a little bit more, please consider sharing these videos out to more friends.